Story 1. A Childhood Dream Destroy. There is no God. There is no heaven. There is no hell. There is only this fucking Dorito disguised as a goddamn greasy-looking chicken nugget from McDonald's. Hell, where it was banished for all entirety. What the fuck is this? Who would do this? What has this world come to? Thanks, Obama. Ever since I was a little boy, all I ever wanted was to buy my own bag of Doritos. My mom would never let me eat them. Oh, how I longed for my own bag of Doritos. I would sometimes imagine the smell of opening the bag, that sweet smell invading my nostrils, smelling like a fresh home-cooked ham in December. How I forever wanted to slowly lick my fingers off and taste the dust and shit that gets left over from them after you hold it. My mouth would be in heaven after I crunched down on them, chewed, laughed, and cried as I devoured them. But that all would change tonight. I walked into CVS with so much anticipation. It would finally happen. I would finally buy my own bag of Doritos. I finally made my way to the chip aisle and grabbed the first Doritos bag I found. I paid for them quickly and got the fuck out. My mind, body, soul were all ready and prepared for this moment. It was 19 years in the making. It was everything I've ever dreamed for. As I took a deep breath and opened the bag, I couldn't hold myself from letting out a little scream of joy as I knew this was it, the moment that I had waited a lifetime for. The nightmare of never eating Doritos was it, and eating this beautiful bag of chips would be my escape from madness. My lifelong dream would come true. As I ate the first small Dorito, a small, single, wet tear fell down my rugged face. At the moment I was in heaven, just like John Coffey at the end of the Green Mile when he was in the execution chair crying. This was nirvana, pure harmony at its finest. I felt like Luke Skywalker after he destroyed the Death Star, and so carefree and light like Miley Cyrus on the wrecking ball. As I reached into the bag, I felt something round and large. At first I thought I hit the fucking jackpot, and it was a huge one, the kind of Dorito that comes around once in a 1,000 years, like a LeBron James in the NBA or a Wayne Gretzky in the NHL. But as I slowly and carefully pulled it out, my world shattered and crumbled right before my very eyes. There is a moment in everyone's life where there are no words. You are just stuck in the moment. Time has slowed down. You can't think, feel, or move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. My life flashed before my eyes, a lifelong dream shattered in seconds. I started to shake furiously, my mouth agape in horror, as I stared at the very thing that I had dreamed of. But this wasn't a dream. This was real life. And sometimes life doesn't go as planned. I held up the Dorito, no chicken nugget, and let out a blood-curdling scream that shook the house to its core and would have made a banshee proud. This not what I had dreamed for. This not what MLK had dreamed for. There is no light in this world, only darkness. And as the winter storm of the century nears closer to Metro Detroit, where I live, and I can only think this it, my time is up. By standing outside in the storm I can end it all, the nightmares, the childhood dream, everything. I will leave this earth as a man who is broken and shattered beyond repair. There is no hope left for me. Death is my only option, as my life slowly fades from my dark, cold brown eyes as the cold winter storm and snow tears away at my naked body, freezing me to death. I will get down on my knees, throw up my arms, and look up to the heavens and scream, God, why have you forsaken me? And all I will be able to think about as I die is that fucking chicken nugget Dorito from hell, and how the very thing I dreamt about and swore to eat was the death of me. God is dead. There are no dreams, only nightmares. There is no hope in this world, no hope. Story 2. They're watching. As you're eating dinner, watching reruns on TV, they're watching. As you sit on your computer late at night, they're watching. When you walk from your bedroom to the bathroom late at night, you can be certain that they're watching. They watch everything you do. They listen to every little sound you make. They're with you every second of the day and every day of the year. Who are they, you may ask? Well, it's not so much a question of who they are, but what they are. For the lack of a better name, I simply call them watchers. Everybody has one, and you've likely already seen yours countless times. It's in the room with you right this second. Take a quick glance all around you. Chances are your eyes connected with the eyes of your watcher. Oh, but don't bother looking again. They can't be seen by normal people. We're programmed not to take any notice of them. They could be anywhere, though, hiding behind chairs in your dining room, watching you from atop your refrigerator, staring at you from underneath your desk as you do work, peeping at you from the end of your bed as you sleep. Some people are chosen, however, chosen to be the few unfortunate bunch that get to see their watcher. I am one of these unlucky few. They're never fully exposed, but the sight of one is a sight to pity. They're almost always hunched over in fetal position, their small, pale, bony body looking as if it would be crushed under the weight of its large head. They have large, black, soulless eyes that are always staring right into yours, always watching you, judging you. It starts slow, being able to see them. In the course of a few weeks, you'll begin to see small movements in your peripheral vision. You will throw these occurrences off as normal, well, until the noises begin. The noises gradually get more and more defined over 2 or 3 weeks. In my experience, it was the slow patting of feet shuffling across my hardwood floor as I was trying to sleep. Then I began to hear it graze the shower curtains as I shampooed my hair. Finally, I could hear it whispering to me when I was alone in a language I had never heard before. For weeks, I thought that I was crazy. For weeks, I considered checking myself into a mental hospital. For weeks, I felt like killing myself. That is, until I finally saw it. It was about a year and a half ago, and I was reading Robert Stevenson's novel, Treasure Island. As usual, I heard the slow patter on the floor coming from the furthest corner of my room to the end of my bed. Annoyed, I looked up, expecting the usual nothingness that I was used to seeing for the past months. When I looked up, it was the same sight I was used to seeing. There was, however, something about this sight that made me feel uneasy. Finally, I noticed it staring at me from between the bars at the end of my bed. I could just see the outline of its head in the dark of the night. I quickly looked back at my book, acting as if I hadn't seen it in hope that it would just go away. I sat there paralyzed for what seemed like half an hour before I looked up again. It was still there staring at me, looking at me, watching me. You have likely had this same experience. The difference is that you don't notice it. Watching you, you're not supposed to notice it. It doesn't want to be noticed. After a few days, I began seeing it everywhere, looking up at me from under the table while I ate dinner. In passing cars on my way to work, my watcher appeared everywhere. I screamed at it to go away. but it just stares at me. I throw things at it, but it doesn't move. My girlfriend and friends all left me because they thought I was acting psychotic. My family keeps telling me that they can help me, but I don't need help. I just need to stare back, and it'll go away. I rarely move anymore. I figure that if I bore it, it'll finally leave. I'll just have to sit here and watch it. I'm always watching it. Story 3. A moment of clarity. It's almost funny. People understand so little about life until their lives are close to over. But youth is wasted on the young, right? Well, from my youth on, I have attended patients at Mashapaug Psychiatric Institute, a private manor in a heavily forested area outside Union, Connecticut. There are a number of mysteries surrounding the institute, such as why the local populace knows so little about us or how the institute came to be officially recognized. But I fear I may understand only the mystery surrounding the longest and currently only residing patient, Mr. Olfson. Mr. Olfson is the constant and overbearing concern of my employers, so much so that the institute is kept open, surely operating at a loss to care for him. The men suffer, so it seemed, from an acute aversion to and fear of ordinary materials, and the powers that be decided exposure therapy was the best hope at rehabilitating the patient. Thus, there were a number of peculiar rules surrounding his care, most of which infuriated Mr. Olfson to no end. No less than 3 large thermometers hung off adhesive hooks inside the door of his room, all older models filled with mercury. He claimed an allergy to mercury, which would cause him to break out in hives, but since the mercury was contained and no hives observed, the allergy seemed a part of his condition. Outside his room there was a parlor area with doorways to other wings and the main office, and every metal fixture in this room was required to be Britannia silver. He claimed to dislike the smell of the metal and said it agitated his nose. Silver allergies are incredibly rare, usually the result of nickel and jewelry, and silver has no smell to speak of. So again his aversion was explained. Psychologically, the strongest reaction was reserved for a wreath decorated with aconitum shoots and flowers which hung on the main office door. The plant is poisonous, but Mr. Olfson would mutter to himself whenever he caught sight of the purple flowers and scurry to another side of the room. It was this reaction which assured most of the staff that the man needed to be here. His condition was so ingrained that at night he was restrained to his bed, an old hospital cot with belts, for fear of violent outbursts. It usually was not bad, but 1 to 2 times a month he would have a bad night. I saw some of the damage. Once after a night of struggling, thick red lines and scratches covered the man. Strangely, he had no problem with the restraints. Rather, the need for being belted down bothered him, and he complained that his treatment was the far crueler restraint. In truth, the argument for keeping him was difficult to sustain, and became more so the longer I stayed at the institute. I would explain that none of his fears were justified, that the allergies were not real. But a man should be able to choose what metals are in his house or flowers in his wreaths. I eventually became sympathetic to his complaints. Whenever I discussed the matter with my employers, however, I would be severely reprimanded. The patients require treatment. They cannot be expected to know better. The explanation rang hollow for me. But after many years, when Mr. Olfson became the only remaining patient, I had a chance to write things. I am now the director of the Institute with a handful of staff, and I resolved to do things better. So 1 week ago, I started to make the changes. First, I removed the thermometers. They popped off with a loud snap, like when one snaps a belt to intimidate a child. Mr. Olson seemed instantly happier. Over the next few days, I removed all the silver, replacing it with brass. The sounds of metal clanging against metal filled the institute, and my ears are still ringing with the clashing, banging noise. Finally, I removed the wreath, and the door creaked loudly. The old would groan as I took out the nails holding in the wreath. The nails are making the door creak. The creaking, the groaning, it is so loud. His nails, his claws, are battering the wood, causing it to groan as it breaks. With moonlight spilling in through the window, I can see a single claw through the door. It's almost funny. Only now at the end do I finally understand why my employers were so insistent on surrounding Mr. Olson with quicksilver, silver, and Wolfsbane. Story 4, A Moment of Horror. The following is a description of one exact point in time. It is exactly 1 hour 4 minutes and 23 seconds, 2:15 a.m. on the second story of a quaint little home in suburbia is a hallway. The hallway begins at the top of the staircase and ends with a door. The oak of the portal and entry are stained smooth, comfortably conversing with the ashen paint surrounding. Its gateway inside aforesaid door is a master bedroom, occupied by a bed, occupied by a happily married couple. The ruby light of the alarm clock glows minimally in the corner. Atop a matching oak knit stand on the wall opposite the door hangs a window, blinds down, curtain pull. The fan on the floor is turned to on, an action ingrained deeply from their previous city apartment, but now routine even in the quiet environs. The man and his wife are facing the same way, away from the tiresome glare of the clock. The man's hand rests on his wife's belly, which has a small bump. Near the end of the hallway, the door closest to the master bedroom is wide open. The walls are half-painted baby blue. A crib is mostly assembled in the middle of the room, atop a sheet of plastic that extends to all four walls. The radiance of the full moon breast, the thinly white blinds, illuminates the room and pours gently into the hallway. The next and last door in the hall is slightly ajar. Peeking through the crack lies an open bed, the covers hurriedly thrown across it, exposing the emptiness of it. Inside the room, at the foot of the bed, is a toy box. A few of the toy box's occupants lie on the floor. On the wall opposite the bed is a closet, the door of which is open. The beams of the moon cast onto that wall, but could not penetrate the darkness of the open closet. Between the hanging shirts stood a shadowy figure no taller and 4 feet. Its eyes were fixated on the door to the hall. Outside of this room, on the other side of the hallway, is the staircase. On the stair, facing the bottom, is a young boy. His face is contorted into panic, his eyes frozen in fear, his mouth slightly open. His right hand firmly gripped the wooden railing, and his bare feet are pressed against the hard stair. On the first floor of the house, around the corner from the bottom of the stairs, was the kitchen. The stainless steel appliances minimally reflected the moon, the angle of which only cast small amounts of light at the foot of each ground floor window. Between the island of many drawers and the stovetop stood a dark figure. Its presence could only be visible by the contrasted glimmer of sharp utensils and appliances surrounding it. The time on the microwave's clock reads 0 o'clock. Connected to the kitchen is the family room. There is one large cushion recliner in the corner and a love seat across the wall in the middle. In the middle of the family room is a coffee table, an empty coaster, and several different brands of magazines lie on its surface. The window behind the love seat cast a dim light onto the TV on the opposite wall of the room, which reflected back onto the glass of the coffee table. Sitting on the love seat is another shadowed figure. On the far side of the family room is the entryway. The door to the outside is dead-bolted. At the entrance is a welcome mat. The word welcome is slightly obscured by 3 different pairs of shoes. On the wall to the left of the entrance is a coat closet, closed and locked without a key. The inside of the closet is completely empty. No warm garments to be found, however. On the floor of the closet is some loose oak flooring. Underneath the unfastened floorboards is an open cellar. The air is thick, the ground is bare and cold. There are several wooden support beams that lead to the floor of the house. Across the ceiling of the room are more wooden beams. Across one of these beams, in the center of the cellar, are 3 knots of old rope. The knots are tight, and the beams on which they are fastened to show signs of wear and scratch near the fibrous ties. The ropes extends downwards to the floor, hooping around the necks of decomposed bodies. Hanging there, a man, a woman, a child, the previous owners. Story 5, the house on the copy. When my sister was about 15, she lived with our mother in the northwest province of South Africa. It's bushveld area, which means lots of thorn trees, long yellow grass, very few neighbors, and silence. They lived in an old farmhouse on the very top of a hill in the middle of several farms in South Africa. We call a hill a kopje. It was like an island in a sea of rolling yellow waves, and it could get pretty lonely and quiet up there. If you stood outside and screamed bloody murder, there would be no one close enough to hear you. My sister, being a difficult teenager, refused to go to public school. She preferred to live with my mom on their kopje in the middle of nowhere and be homeschooled. Weeks would go by without them seeing another soul. Certainly not a life I could live, which was why I was back in the city with my dad at a public school. As if the isolation and silence weren't enough, strange things would happen in that house. Every now and then the stereo and lights would turn on or off by themselves. Doors would open and close. Outside lights would burst for no reason at all, and most people who would come to visit and stay the night often had bizarre nightmares. I know I did. But despite all this, the 2 of them loved living in their strange old house on the kopje. My mom had 2 dogs, Mooney, named after Professor Lupin in Harry Potter, an Irish wolfhound, and Tujan, a border collie. Every afternoon my mom would take them for a long walk down the dusty farm roads and come back just as the sun was setting. My sister would often go with her on the daily dog walk, but this day she stayed behind, caught up in her studies. My mom and the dogs had been gone for about an hour, so my sister was expecting them back any minute. Sure enough, from her seat in front of her desk in the study, she heard my mom calling to Mooney as they came through the front gate, and then the gate shutting behind them. Shortly after that, she heard my mom's heavy hiking boots walking across the slate tiles towards the front door. My sister got up from her seat to go greet them. As she stepped into the hallway, Tujan came rushing past her, almost tripping her Tujin ran down the hallway and into my mother's bedroom at the end of it, and my sister continued through the lounge to the front door to say hi to my mom. When she got to the front door, it was closed and locked. A bit confused, she went to the back door through the kitchen. It too was closed and locked. Perplexed, my sister went back down the hallway, checking the study, her bedroom, and the bathroom. Still nothing. Finally, she went to my mom's bedroom, where she knew Tujin had to be. She had seen him run in there. She had felt him brush past her legs. The silly dog had almost tripped her. The room was empty and silent, just like the rest of the house. There were only two ways in and out of that house, the front and the back door. Both doors were closed and locked, and every window in the house had security bars, so there was no way of getting in or out through a window. Clearly, she was absolutely alone in the house. My sister says that it was at this point that she started panicking a bit. She unlocked the front door and went outside. She walked right around the house, checked the garden shed, went out the front gate, and walked down the road a bit, all the while calling to my mom and the dogs. Nothing. She was alone. 30 minutes later, my mom and the dogs arrived home from their walk to find my sister sitting on the front step, white as a sheet, clinging to the poor cat like her life depended on it. Who knows why such a thing would happen? Maybe all the silence had made my sister a bit prone to fantasies, though she swears high and low that she didn't imagine it, and that nothing like it ever happened again. All I know for sure is that when I was staying with them on holidays, I refused to ever be left alone on that hill. Story 6. You know that old urban legend. If you grew up in the country as I did, you've heard it. The one about some bridge or some location, usually in a valley and almost always near water, where something horrible supposedly happened to a mother and her baby, and at night, if you are quiet, you can hear a baby crying or a woman calling for her child. Yeah, that one. It's a great excuse to take your girlfriend out to a dark, secluded location, get her all scared, and have her jump in your lap. When she feels all safe and secure, the panties come right off. Right? Scary places always landed me the choice as back in the day. Know what I mean, bro? Yeah, well, I know what really happened, and I know the place where it occurred. You see, there's this old bridge down in a valley that crosses a small river. It's not far from here. If you want, I can take you out there. Yeah. We can go tonight. The legend usually says a mother was rushing her sick baby to the hospital and ran her car off the bridge. The story also goes that the mother got out of the car, but drowned after repeatedly trying to find her baby in the dark water. The next morning, the police found the car and the two bodies after a farmer called the wreck in. Years later, teenagers used to hang out in the fields on the north side of the bridge, and they told stories of hearing a woman screaming, "Oh God, my baby, someone, please help, oh God, my baby." There are variations, but this is usually the gist of the tale. Well, the truth is the valley was haunted a long time before anything like that ever happened. And it wasn't haunted by some woman screaming for her lost baby. Not then, at least. You see, out in the country here, there's things that never see the light of day. Things not meant for mortal eyes. They wander the countryside looking for food. They feed on humans, you see. They wear the skin of their kills, look just like us. Once it's on them, you can't tell them apart from us. What they look like under the skin, nobody alive now knows. The woman in the story, she was rushing her baby to the hospital And she did wreck, but she didn't run off the bridge. She came close, though, and she seemed to be in luck, as a truck came along just minutes after she ran off the road and smacked a tree. Her lights were still on, and the driver of the truck spotted her waving in the middle of the road. What happens next? Well, it's pretty horrible. You see the driver of the truck. Well, he was one of those things, and he was wearing the previous owner's skin. He pulls over, offers to help. The mother is on the verge of passing out, so he helps her get the baby out of the car. He found it impossible to resist the tender, sweet flesh of one so young. The smell of its innocence was too much, and its appetite overtook it. He ate the baby right there in front of the mother, jaws split like some sort of horrible giant snake, bit it right in half, swallowed it in 2 bites right in front of that poor woman. That's where the screams come from, you see, right before he ate her too. Of course, she didn't die so quick, being a much bigger meal than a little baby. The real horror of these things is, once they eat you, your soul or whatever, it doesn't move on like it does after a normal death. It lingers, you see. How do I know all of this? Well, I grew up around here. My grandfather told me all about it. He was one of the cops that found the car. You see, he ran across one of those things here in town once. Said it looked like a person, just didn't seem to move right. His grandmother was an old Indian wise woman. She told him stories of the skinwalkers when he was a child. Said he'd know when he met one. So you want to see the place? It's just a few miles from here. Yeah, hop in the truck. I'll take you out there. She's a beaut, ain't she? Belonged to my grandpa, too. She's a '55 Chevy, restored it myself. Finish your drink. We'll head out there. Story 7. An ordinary day. It is just another day for anyone but me. Cars zip past on the highway just beyond my house. The sun is shining down and birds are singing the day's glory just beyond my windowsill. I can see the leaves of an oak tree swaying in the wind outside. The entrancing deep green has my vision captive. Today would be beautiful for anyone else. I desperately wish it was for me as well. In my hallway, at my closed bedroom door, I can hear a scratching. It's slow and meticulous, but ever so constant and loud. It woke me up, and it's been going on for almost 10 minutes now. I heard it yesterday morning, and the morning before that. I've always been too afraid to check it out. It's that scratching that keeps me plastered to the foot of my bed, watching out my window, knowing the sound will eventually break. No matter how scared the noise has made me, I can't bring myself to find the source. I live all alone. There's no one there but me, Elizabeth. A voice whispers through the cracks of my flimsy barrier. The sound of my name startles me from my hypnotic gaze. I turn towards the door and my eyes latch onto the door handle. It's just an ordinary door with plain white paint and a bronze handle. The scratching gets louder and faster as I look on. My heart is racing in my chest. I'm too scared to ask who's there. I'm too scared to respond at all. But the sound of nails dragging across the wood definitely sounds like it's heavier than before. Somehow I wonder if it, whatever it is, knows I'm looking. Its way, Elizabeth. It whispers a little louder. The voice is grainy, but it floats on the air of my room, making it sound like it's not beyond the door at all. It's too hard to discern a gender from it. It barely sounds human. My heart jumps up into my throat as it pounds even harder. I've never heard my name with such intent, such malice. I don't have a soul to watch my back. Not in my house, my poor cat, Rios, the only friend I had in this hideous town, ran away just a few weeks back. I moved here to start a new life, but now it seems like I'm trapped in a never-ending nightmare. This problem was escalating. The scratching was bad, but it always went away. Now it was saying my name. I locked all my doors and windows at night. I couldn't imagine who or what was out there, but it is to be too hard to deal with this madness every morning. With charging, I get up from my bed, ready to face the terror that called out to me. The scratching slows, and my eyes shift. Downward, I see a shadow under the door, dark and unmoving. I watch it as I take a step, and then another, my bare feet moving slowly and silently over the hardwood floor. The anger that prompted this action recedes into the fear that's boiling in my stomach. I watch with widened eyes as the shadow moves a little to the left, dragging the nose with it. I can feel my nightgown brushing the backs of my legs until I stop, right in front of the door. I can't even reach for the handle. All I can do is stare at the shadow in front of me. The scratching drags on and my body quivers. No matter how hard I try to stop it, would this the day I would face this morning demon? Would I open the door and see what was there the entire time? Could I put an end to this mystery and see who had the gall to call my name? Before I could even find the strength to reach for the knob, I watch as the shadow dances away from view. At my wit's end, I yank the door open and find nothing. The hallway is empty, but for a small table and a lamp. The sunlight from my bedroom window illuminates the area enough for me to see that it is just a normal hallway, the same one I'd left that night when I went to bed. Today is not the day of legends, it's just another day. Bonus stories. Story 1. Up. Do you know what a cordyceps is? I didn't either until 20 minutes ago. It's a family of thousands of different types of fungus, grows all around the world in various rainforests and jungles. The awful thing about them is they're parasitic. They grow on other animals, and that happens too. Run into some spores, and then it starts to colonize his insides, starting with his brain. At some point, the ant starts to act visibly ill, standing in place and shivering or walking in circles. If a fellow colony member sees him in this condition, he will be dragged to the border of the colony and exiled. Then, when it's almost over, the ant weakly climbs as high as he can up the vines and locks his body on tight. Finally, he dies, and the fungus emerges from the back of his head, bursting forth like a long and foul fruit. After a short time, the little stalk spews forth its own spores, leaving the mummified and broken ant clinging to the stalk, his eye cavities filled with drying fungus. I mention this because last night, when I was up on the roof of my apartment complex, I found my brother's body. He's been back from 18 months on duty in the Philippines for less than 3 days. This was the first I'd seen him. My parents called me up the day before yesterday to tell me that he was on his way up. They told me he'd stayed in his room since he got home, and then suddenly got up and announced he was on his way to see me. They thought he was drunk. I thought he'd never made it. He must have come straight up to the roof and die by the smell of it. I was just finishing a cigarette, all torn up with anxiety and head throbbing, and when the acrid smoke vanished, I caught a whiff of rot on the hot wind. It took me just a few minutes before I'd found him, face down behind the vents and fans. A slimy gray column rose up obscenely from the base of his skull, and a frozen waterfall of roots and tendrils was dangling from his eye sockets and mouth. At the top of stalk was small arrangement of feathery wisps, a white powder drifting idly from its tips. The spores must have drifting over the north side of the building all day, my side of the building. I came down to my apartment to try to call up the police, and my headache was rising to a feverish throb. I got through the door, and the moment I reached for the phone, pain flared in my head, so bad I almost passed out. I've since tried 3 times, and I can never get my hand up on it. The same thing happens when I try to get up and leave the room. I feel spines of ice tunneling up into my skull, and my limbs lock up and shudder. The ants, in their last moments, crawl as high up the vines as he can climb. This is so the spore will spread over more of the colony below. In the end, the parasite controls thee with an almost intelligent drive. God help me. The pain is almost blinding now, and a new thought has been rising up rhythmically in my head like a record skipping. Up, up, up. It's joined by an image of my office tower. It's taller than my apartment, the tallest place I can think of, and although the bulge on the back of my neck is the size of a peach, the skin stretched shiny, and I am dizzy and my eyes are cloudy. I think I can make it there. Up. No, I'm sick. I need help. The building pulses again in my mind. The cold wind, the roof, and the sky. These images and concepts dull the pain momentarily as they pass through my mind. I think I can get there. Up, up. If you live in downtown Chicago, I would get the fuck out. The spores must have drifting over the north side of the building all day. My side of the building. I came down to my apartment to try to call up the police, and my headache was rising to a feverish throb. I got through the door, and the moment I reached for the phone, pain flared in my head, so bad I almost passed out. I've since tried 3 times, and I can never get my hand up on it. The same thing happens when I try to get up and leave the room. I feel spines of ice tunneling up into my skull, and my limbs lock up and shudder. The ants, in their last moments, crawl as high up the vines as he can climb. This is so the spore will spread over more of the colony below. In the end, the parasite controls thee with an almost intelligent drive. God help me. The pain is almost blinding now, and a new thought has been rising up rhythmically in my head like a record skipping. Up, up, up. It's joined by an image of my office tower. It's taller than my apartment, the tallest place I can think of, and although the bulge on the back of my neck is the size of a peach, the skin stretched shiny, and I'm dizzy, and my eyes are cloudy. I think I can make it there. Up. No, I'm sick. I need help. The building pulses again in my mind. The cold wind, the roof, and the sky. These images and concepts dull the pain momentarily as they pass through my mind. I think I can get there. Up, up. If you live in downtown Chicago, I would get the fuck out. Story 2. Good night, precious. My son is 2 years old and does not sleep. So when I saw an ad online for Good Night, Precious, the only book guaranteed put your child to sleep, I clicked. I was skeptical, but there was a video demonstration on the website. I'm going to show you how this works. Right now, I've got a child in bed. The goateed man motioned to a 3 or 4-year-old boy lying in bed, wide awake. I'm going to read the book to him. Watch what happens. The video cut to him finishing the book. The sun is set, and you slumber. Good night, precious. Little wonder As soon as he closed the book, the boy's eyes fixed straight ahead, blank, motionless, then they fluttered shut. No wake-ups in the middle of the night, either. Once he falls asleep with this book, he stays asleep, the man said over the boy's light snores. I was sold. I clicked the order link. In 3 days I had the book in my hands. It was a lot thinner than I expected. Only a few cardboard pages. The cover was a drawing of a boy sleeping in bed, as an old woman, maybe his grandma, watched them from a rocking chair in the corner. I read it to Jackson that very night. It's time to go to sleep, little dear. When you wake up, I'll still be here, I read softly. The illustration showed an old woman tucking a child into bed. She wasn't smiling. I glanced at Jackson, still wriggling and wide awake, but he seemed to be enjoying it, at least. Night has fallen. Stars are out. Go to sleep now. Don't you pout. This image showed the same woman sitting in a rocking chair next to her sleeping child. You'll sleep through sadness, sleep through pain, and when it's done, we'll do it again. That rhyme's really a stretch. I glanced at the image. The woman was getting out of her seat, walking towards her son's bed. Go to sleep now, little one. Be patient. Now, we're almost done. In this drawing, the woman was looking down at her sleeping child from the bedside. She was holding a pillow. I turned the page to the last one. My heart stopped. The old woman was pressing the pillow over the child's face, smiling, with one of those cartoonish grins you often see in kids' books. I read in a soft, cautious voice, "The sun is set, and you slumber. Good night, precious." Little wonder I closed the book and looked over at Jackson. He was fast asleep. It really works. I moved him to his bed and enjoyed some well-earned alone time. Who cares if the book is a little weird? It really works. An hour later, I was asleep. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. I woke up at 8. Jackson didn't wake me at all. Welcome change from the usual. I looked over to his still slumbering body and smiled. But by 11 a.m., he still hadn't woken up. He never sleeps this late. Maybe he's sick. I turned on some light music, talked to him. I patted his back. No response. "Jackson," I said. I picked him up, put him on my lap. His head slumped against my chest. "Jackson, are you okay?" "Nothing." Just his soft, deep breaths against me. "Jackson, Jackson, wake up." "Nothing," I yelled in his ear. I bounced him up and down. I brought him out in the sun. Nothing woke him up. Now, it's almost 3 o'clock. He's been asleep for 19 hours. I'm about to load him into the car seat and drive him to the doctor. I think something is terribly wrong with him. Story 3. The uninvited guest. Paolo fed me one last strawberry from the painted clay bowl. He let the juice drip down my chin and then kissed away every last trace. For a moment, I was lost in the beauty of his Herculean bronzed skin and the sound of the ocean crashing on the shore. A warm breeze blew into our gossamer paradise. Paolo began to remove his white linen shirt. The sudden darkness shocked me as I awoke from my dream to sweat-drenched sheets. I was alone in my bed, and my heart was pounding. I threw off my heated blanket and slid closer to the frosted window to cool off. The glowing red clock on my husband's side of the bed read 3:04 a.m. Charlie was not in bed sleeping next to me as he should have on this wintry Tuesday night. I strained to hear the sound of his PlayStation in the living room. Sometimes he would play in the middle of the night when he couldn't sleep. I could hear no sounds and could see no trace of light glowing from the crack under the bedroom door. The only light source I could see was from the red alarm clock shining against the closed closet door. I climbed out of bed to search, checking the bathroom, living room, and kitchen. Charlie was not on the first floor. That left only the basement. If he was indeed in the house, I ascertained that his car was in the driveway and that all the doors were locked. Standing at the top of the basement stairs, I was still disoriented and only half awake when I realized that all the lights were off in the basement. That was truly odd, because Charlie always insisted that we keep one of the lights on down there. "Charlie," I meekly called out into the darkness below. "Charlie," I received no response, and my panic was growing. Where could he have gone? He would never have left without telling me. We had just moved into this house about 6 months ago, and I was still nervous about being in it, alone, and I never went into the basement at night. Taking a deep breath and pretending not to be scared, I started down the basement stairs. As soon as I made it to the arid bottom, I flipped the light switch on. The sudden surge of bright light blinded me for a few seconds. Once my eyes adjusted, I immediately saw Charlie, asleep in his recliner. I exhaled deeply and chuckled. "What are you doing down here?" I asked as I shook him away. Charlie opened his kind eyes and smiled at me. "It was too hot, and you would not stop talking in your sleep. I just needed some." The sudden sound of creaking from upstairs stopped his train of thought and made us both look up in alarm. "What the hell?" I asked. Charlie jumped up from his chair and leaned toward the stairs to hear for more sounds. Slowly we began the ascent from the basement to the kitchen. The lights were still off as Charlie pulled a kitchen knife and began to survey each room in the house. I followed along behind until I noticed cold air coming from the front room. My heart dropped into the pit of my stomach when I saw the front door open. Cautiously, I looked outside and saw only one set of snowy footprints leading away from the door and disappearing into the clear streets. Unable to speak, I pointed the footprints out to Charlie. He grabbed his cell phone and called 911 as he shut and dead-bolted the door. I could hear him speaking with the operator as I slowly made my way back to my bed to sit down, still stunned, knowing someone had been in the house. But why and where? That's when I noticed the red glow of the clock alarm was no longer shining on the closet door. The closet door. The closet door was wide open. Story 4. The only sensible ritual pasta. You wake up to find yourself lying flat in an unfamiliar and utterly filthy room. Your head pounds as you sit up and survey your surroundings. Oh, what hit me? You notice the room is dimly lit by a hanging bulb that threatens to flicker out any moment. Large piles of debris are scattered about the small room, and there are no windows. Hey, who said that? Where am I? To your left, right, and straight ahead of you, there are sinister-looking doors. You do not fully comprehend your situation, but you must choose one of these doors. One door. Hey, are you ignoring me? Story 5. Dread. Dread. A strong feeling of fear about something that will or might happen. Webster's Dictionary. What was that noise? I gradually shuffle out of bed, fumbling my way to the light switch. After my eyes adjust to the blinding flood of light from the hanging lamp in my bedroom, I scanned the space. Nothing. It sounded vaguely like a giggle, but it was so quiet it could have just been the wind. Living out in the country, with the nearest neighbor 3 miles away, has left me overly sensitive to every sound I hear out here. I'm just about to turn off the light and go back to bed when I hear it. An unmistakable thud. It came from downstairs. Cursing myself for never buying a gun, I slowly descend the stairs, clutching my broom for dear life. After the age it takes me to get to the ground level, I turn on the kitchen light and look around. Nothing. I don't have any pets. What could have made the thud sound I heard? I think back to the faint giggle I heard just before I fell asleep. At this point, my heart is pounding and I'm starting to feel lightheaded. I look toward the den, steeling myself against the oppressive empty blackness inside. I creep closer and then turn on the switch I know is to the left of the doorway. Light floods the room. Nothing. I shakily patrol the rest of my house in similar fashion, skulking up to rooms, mustering all the courage I can before turning on the lights, and being greeted by the same lack of any threat or explanation for the noises I heard. Several times I could have sworn I saw something flit by in the corner of my vision, but I would turn and nothing would be there. I decide to give up on my search. Clearly I've been watching too many horror movies. Snap, pitch black darkness. To be honest, I'm not even sure whether or not I screamed when the power went out. Something occurs to me. I didn't notice it when the power blew out, but now that I think about it, I am almost sure I heard a faint giggling right when the lights went dark. I'm now shaking and my palms are starting to sweat, making the broom slip around in my fingers. I force myself to search the rooms again, taking several violent swings at looming shadows that turned out to be household objects. At one point I knock over a chair. I don't remember it being there before. I scan the room, finding nothing, and move on to look over the rest of the rooms in my small dwelling, save for the garage. Nothing. I steal toward my garage, firmly gripping the broom, and take a look at the breaker box. Everything looks the way it's supposed to, with no broken switches or wires. Now that I think about it, it is awfully windy tonight. The thud could easily have come from outside, and the giggling I heard could have been wind rushing through something like the chimney. The blackout was probably due to the wind knocking over a power line slowly. My heartbeat starts to crawl back down to normal levels, and my breathing gets less shallow. I breathe a sigh of relief, curse myself for making a big deal out of nothing, and head back upstairs to my room. Tomorrow I'll have to call the electric company. I settle into bed, appreciating that no one was around to see me poking about my house like a child who expects to find monsters under the bed. Suddenly the lights pop back on, flooding my vision. You really shouldn't live out here by yourself, the voice whispers into my ear. A fresh wave of dizziness sets my head spinning. Heart pounding, I turn towards the voice's origin, and I don't even get a chance to scream. Story 6. Don't be afraid. I was thrown into an inescapable void, and the depths of my soft blankets were the only protection I had from the shadows that seeped from the corners of my bedroom. After retreating into the safety of my blanket, I realized I had forgotten to turn on my fan. My hands shook and the back of my neck tensed. Don't be afraid. I exhaled, and hot breath moistened my face. I waited a moment before I reached through an opening. The warm strands of the blanket tickled my arm, and soon I felt the cooler airbrush against my fingertips. I gasped, and my arm snapped back into the protection. Don't be afraid. I slid my hand across the smooth surface of my bedsheets, and again, cool air brushed my fingertips. I gulped and blindly reached farther. My fingers made contact with a hard plastic object. I searched and discovered a button, then pressed it 3 times for the highest setting. The powerful jet stream of icy air raced through the opening in my blanket and froze the vapor on my cheeks. I exhaled and slid my arm back under cover. After a few minutes, my eyes slid shut, listening to the whir of the fan. Suddenly, a soft creak came from the closet. My eyes flew open, and the hair on my neck pulled on my pores. I turned my head, my breathing shook and became heavier. I slowly lifted one hand above my head and grabbed the edge of the blanket. Don't be afraid. I squeezed my eyes shut and quickly pulled down the blanket. My body tensed as I felt the liquid, open darkness wash over me. My eyelids trembled, refusing to see what had caused the creak. You're afraid. The raspy whisper barely overpowered the fan and tickled my eardrums. I froze and forced my eyes open. I searched through the darkness, and my body shot back a few inches. That is when I saw it, standing in between the 2 open sliding doors of my closet was a tall, thin thing with a slouch. Its arms hung useless. Its white, marble-shaped eyes and crooked grin gave me chills. Its teeth were greenish-brown, with splotches of what looked like blood. Its eyes pierced into mine. I couldn't look away. It tilted its head. I scrambled up. My heart beat, thumped against my chest. "W.H., who are you?" I managed to squeeze out of my dry throat. "I am you." I swallowed cold air. My pores loosened. "How are you, me?" "Why, you look nothing like me." I squinted at it as I slid my tongue across my slippery front teeth. Only the frost of mint lingered. "I am you?" I stopped myself from asking again. I squeezed my eyes shut and held my breath before opening them. It was still there. "How?" I whispered to myself. I ran my rough palm down my cold face. Suddenly, there was a rugged breathing behind me. My eyes widened and my body tensed. It is sad you cannot see. A cold, large, bony hand landed on my shoulder, and a shiver shot through my spine. "I can help you. Do not be afraid." My shoulders eased. "It help me?" I asked as my hand fell from my face. My eyes searched the void. I could barely make out shapes. "Relax." I allowed myself to relax. The air immediately became thinner. It was becoming harder to breathe. My lungs were heavy, as if they were filled with water. My eyes widened, and I clawed at my chest as I thrashed about violently on my bed. Do not fight it. My bed disappeared from underneath me. My mouth opened to gasp, but there was nothing entering my desperate lungs. I expected to hit the ground. Instead, I fell through a dark void. My eyes darted around the thick darkness for the glimmering hope I sought. There was nothing. There would never be anything. I am no longer afraid. I am the darkness. Story 7. Hazards in buying a used car. A 1998 powder blue Ford Taurus isn't anyone's choice for a vehicle, but it was what I ended up choosing at the lot. It wasn't a bad car, not too many miles, recently replaced tires, and it was cheap. My only real complaint is that the previous owner had seriously gone overboard with air fresheners. The whole interior reeked of vanilla, and Pine, the dealer, real nice guy, said he was cutting me a deal. Told me that they were having trouble moving this one off the lot. Explained that no one seemed to be interested. I guess I'm less picky than average because the car looked fine to me. So a check and a handshake later, I was driving home. That's when the strangeness started. I hadn't noticed it during the complimentary test drive I had been given, but there was a lump in the padding of the seat, right in the small of my back. It wasn't enough to make driving uncomfortable, so I assumed the foam was coming loose under the fabric and let it go. The car was a decade old after all. For about 2 weeks I drove the car like that, to and from work, picking up groceries and stuff like that. The lump was pushed to the back of my mind, and I had pretty much gotten used to it. Then it moved. At first I thought I was imagining things. Foam padding doesn't squirm around, obviously, and it had just been the slightest feeling on my back that set me off. But no, as I kept driving, it became clear that the seat had shifted. It definitely felt different against my spine. At this point, I thought maybe this is what was wrong initially with the seat. That maybe the loose foam had shifted when I first got the car. Once I got home, I decided I would examine it in more detail. By the time I got into my driveway, the lump was downright irritating, so I hopped out of my seat and began to probe the fabric with my fingers. Whatever was in there, I quickly noticed it wasn't foam padding. The consistency was thicker than foam, almost gelatinous, and there was hard pieces inside it that felt almost like stone. I couldn't make it out at the time, but the shape of the thing was familiar, too. Confirming my suspicions, I also noted for the first time a long seam in the seat that someone had stitched up. The previous owner must have stuck something in there. I hopped back in to take the car to the dealer and complain. This is the sort of thing a salesman should tell you, you know. Maybe they just didn't know about it. I hadn't seen it at first, either. I was about halfway to the dealership when the thing in the seat began writhing around. Not a shift like before, but actively crawling underneath the fabric. If you can imagine the feeling of something worming its way across your lower back, you can probably replicate my reaction. The number on the speedometer doubled. I nearly ruined those recently. Replaced tires swerving into the dealership parking lot. It didn't take long to find the man who'd sold me the car, and even less time to grab him by the shirt sleeve and stammer out what had happened. He was surprised by my story, but strangely receptive, more than I would be if some punk teenager started rambling about squirming car seats, and came back with me to the car, pulling out a pocket utility knife as we walked. As we cut the fabric of the seat open, the stench that spewed out almost literally knocked us back out of the car. But what we smelled didn't make either of our stomachs turn nearly as bad as what we saw. Inside the seat, under the fabric, we found a half-rotten human hand.